It is 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and you're listening to 104.5 The Zone. That means NSC Backstage is on the air. Alongside Will Boling, I'm Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams is our producer. Beautiful night in Music City. Soccer on the television in the studio. CONCACAF Champions Cup action. It is a perfect evening, Will Boling, to talk Nashville Soccer Club as the boys in gold return home with hopes to end a 4-game winless run.
That is right. You are absolutely correct. Great to be back with you. We have a saying on our morning show, Ramon, Kayla, and Will, that it is a beautiful morning in the Music City because any morning you wake up in Nashville is a beautiful day. Well, it's a beautiful evening in Nashville because any evening you spend in Nashville, Tennessee is a lovely evening. That, of course, it is here tonight. We've got a lot to cover. A quick turnaround again, not as quick maybe as some of these midweek games from a Saturday to a Wednesday, a Sunday to a Thursday, but a loss over the weekend at Inter Miami, positives in that performance to talk about, and let's get into it. Wednesday nights are soccer nights here in the station.
3-1, the final at Chase Stadium over the weekend. The fifth time that Nashville has faced Miami since Lionel Messi arrived in the summer of 2023. And we've talked about it, right? The boys in gold have matched up well against Miami, arguably better than any other MLS team. They've played them more than any other MLS team. Nashville been compact in those games. They've been clinical on the counters, on set pieces. But, Will, this game played out very differently in that the roles were almost reversed, right? In how each team approached things, especially in the second half of this game where it was Nashville who had the majority of possession in the second 45. Nashville who outshot Miami, who spent more time in the opposition box in the final third, yet it was Nashville who fell by 2 goals.
51% to 49% possession in the second half. If you listen to us broadcast Nashville Soccer Club games, if you've listened to this show before, I think we have given enough disclaimers that possession is not the end-all be-all. Possession is not the indicator of success always. Possession with a purpose. Possession with scoring chances. Possession that gets you into the final third, into your opponent's 18-yard box. That's a different story. I thought Nashville had the latter of those two on Saturday night in Fort Lauderdale in a 3-1 loss to Inter Miami. 51% of the possession. They outshot Miami 8-2. And I think, Lucas, we talked about this on the postgame show. Nashville's 44 final third entries in the second half specifically compared to Miami's 9. That is as stark of a contrast as you're going to get. Obviously, final third entries do not win you points. Possession does not win you points. Shot attempts does not earn you points. But with where this Nashville SC team is to start the season, with the challenge of CONCACAF Champions Cup, with injuries to important players, they still have not had all 3 DPs on the field at the same time. This was progress over the weekend against the team, for my money, I said it all weekend, is the best side in MLS when Lionel Messi is on the pitch. I thought that Jacob Schaffelberg was particularly excellent. I know we'll talk more about that throughout the night here on the show for the next hour. But ultimately, this was a microcosm of Nashville's season. Unfortunately, some good moments, some positive play. Nashville concedes its 4th penalty of the season. That's most in MLS in that second half. Lionel Messi makes no mistake, slots it home 3-1. And ultimately, maybe to the casual observer, this looked like a comfortable Miami win. It was anything but in that second half.
Yeah, Lionel Messi scores on a counter in the 11th minute. That equalized for the Herons. Nashville jumped all over Miami early, an own goal off a corner kick on the first set-piece opportunity of the evening in the second minute. Nashville's first corner kick goal in MLS play in 2024. And then Messi providing a corner kick assist to Sergio Busquets in the 39th minute, 2-1 to score at the break. And then after that dominant spell from Nashville that we've been talking about, boys in gold unable to convert in that stretch. And it is Messi that converts on a penalty kick won against the run of play in the 81st minute. Really, that closed the door for the boys in gold against the Supporter Shield leaders in Nashville. Now 4 straight games winless in MLS play as they return home to Geodis Park to host San Jose Earthquakes. And manager Gary Smith, fielding questions at Chase Stadium after the game, was asked, after this run of form or during this run of form, where does Nashville go from here?
Well, it's a very good question. I think we're finding a really good balance in the group. You know, the 2 weeks off, I think, gave us a good opportunity to find some structure, and we saw I think the benefits of that and the results of that. some excellent chances created, as I think you've already said. Honestly, 4 dead balls in 4 games is not a stat that I like the look of. And I think the guys are very aware of that. I can only tell you from that front that last year in the very same setup, maybe minus 1 or 2 individuals, we were in the elite category from defending situations. So are we saying now that those players missing are such an important factor? In Walker's case, I would say absolutely so. I think what we can look at are how those set pieces come about. There were some difficult moments leading into the second goal. I was just as disappointed about the first goal. It was really, the first sort of bright moment that they had. There was more that could be done there, for sure. And I think some of the individual defending, the guys will look back on and say, given a second opportunity, I might make 1 or 2 different choices. But I think all in all, part of the difficulty at the moment is not actually taking advantage of some of the really good opportunities that we're having. There's no doubt about it. We don't look as watertight as we have done in the past. I've given you my opinion on the fact that we're missing 2 internationals, which I think will make a big difference. But ultimately, I think we're making enough opportunities. And of course, if you can extend that lead from 1 to 2 here, I think it gives everyone a huge amount of confidence to maybe go on and protect. Quick goal after our goal, and the tide turns. But I've said to the guys, more positive than negative. 2 set-piece situations, a penalty and a corner again that have been the undoing of the group.
So that's Nashville SC manager Gary Smith following the 3-1 loss at Inter Miami. So positive to draw, Will Boling, but ultimately, obviously, it's the result that matters. And Nashville at this point have conceded 16 goals so far this season. That's through only 8 MLS games. It took Nashville 20 games to get to 16 goals conceded in 2023 in a season where the boys in gold conceded the fewest goals in MLS play last year. And those players he's referring to that are out of the group, Walker Zimmerman and Shaq Moore, the 2 U.S. internationals. And Lucas McNaughton left injured in the second half Saturday as well, as we await an update on him this week.
And I think, too, Lucas, when you take away, let's say, the set-piece goals, 4 set-piece goals in 4 weeks, you've got a couple of penalty kicks in there as well. LAFC, Inter Miami over the weekend, specifically the penalty kicks that Nashville has conceded and the opponent has scored on. Then you are now talking about, let's take away 6 goals. Let's take away 2 penalty kicks and 4 set pieces. I understand that this is a trivial exercise, right? You can't, as a manager, just take away mistakes your team has made. You have to live with them. But to show you how fine the margins are, you take away those 6 goals, and Nashville would have the 3rd best defense statistically in the Eastern Conference without penalties and set pieces. That is the difference between this team so far this year. I think Gary Smith speaks to that in speaking with the media, that Gary Smith said it just there. You heard a minute ago. That is the stat that he doesn't like. That is the number that he feels like is within Nashville's control. And I think that Nashville fans can maybe honestly find some comfort in that. Look, I get it. After a 3-1 defeat, it's hard to hear somebody say, hey, find comfort in the fact that this and that you're getting closer, that, hey, it's only set pieces. Giving up set piece goals is frustrating. But I do think that is something that Nashville can work on. I think that is something Nashville can fix. I think that is something that Nashville has excelled in the past. Gary Smith told us before the game over the weekend, that was one of Nashville's strengths last season. Maybe you get Walker Zimmerman back in that team, the best aerial threat on the team, him and Sam Surridge both. You feel like you have another body in there who is not only good at winning headers, he is maybe as good as anyone in the league at winning headers. That is where I think this team takes that next step and can start getting clean sheets again, can start holding teams scoreless much more often.
Yeah, and it's something that we've seen Nashville be able to break out of, right? I mean, this isn't new. Nashville has had issues defending set pieces before. I think back to the 2021 and especially the 2022 season, it kind of reared its ugly head, right? For a couple of stretches there, everything else was, stonewall secure defensively. Nashville was one of the best teams in the league in the run of play in limiting goals against, but it was set pieces that were often doing the boys in gold in. And now you're kind of seeing that issue here, maybe a little shakier outside of those dead balls than they were in those prior seasons. But like you just outlined, that is ultimately the cause of Nashville's woes, conceding goals at this moment as they're 14th in the Eastern Conference heading into match day 11. And I've heard this brought up a lot, Will, the idea of, and Gary Smith at least has been asked about this multiple times, on this almost being a continuation of the Leagues Cup struggles,
right?
Or post Leagues Cup struggles from 2023, right? Nashville goes on that run. They're right there on the cusp of their first trophy as an MLS club, 11 rounds of penalty shootout. They fall to Miami in the final and then go on a dry run offensively in the latter part of the 2023 regular season, eliminated by Orlando in the playoffs. And maybe it's easy from a bird's eye view to kind of lump the back end of last season and the front end of this season together. But the struggles are very different, right? What Nashville is going through now versus what they were experiencing in the months of October and November, or should I say September and October.
Yeah, and it's a different team. You have different main characters in this story at this point. In midfield, Dax McCarty is no longer in this team. You've got changes all across the pitch. The core of this roster is still the same, but I think Drew Yearwood coming into midfield, I think one of the performers of the night for Nashville, for what it's worth on Saturday for this team, he is a very different kind of profile and character into this team. Obviously, Sam Surridge having a full offseason has made a big difference. Sam Surridge looks excellent. I think Sam Surridge would tell you that he should score over the weekend as well. But at the same time, I think Sam Surridge has had a really good start to the season. I think Nashville fans can feel good about where they are with him. The challenges are very different. And Nashville struggled at times to score down the stretch last season after Leagues Cup. They have not struggled to score this season at all. And that is with Hani Mukhtar not being available for the beginning of the season, without Sam Surridge being available for the beginning of the season. They've scored 9 goals this season. That's right in the middle of the pack of the Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer. So I hesitate to put a lot of chance creation problems on this team. Jacob Schaffelberg has taken a massive step in starting to become a star in this league the way that he is playing. I just think the shuffling of the cards in midfield is just going to take some time. This is not NFL football. This is not the kind of game where a month into the season, your identity has ultimately already been decided. The identity of this team is completely yet to be decided. We're a month and a half in. If you're a month and a half into a football season, if you're listening to us here on The Zone and you're getting into soccer, you're learning about this is something for you to listen to in the offseason and try to interact with us and interact with Nashville sports. You can be somebody totally different in April than you are in October when the season ends. And I tell people all the time that the normal soccer calendar around the world is a school year. You're not the same person at the beginning of your school year as you are the end of your school year. So that is the positive for Nashville at this point. They've got plenty of time figuring out, hey, the most tenured player in your team is no longer here. He's an Atlanta United player. What does that look like for you a month or two into the season? Drew Yearwood is being asked to be a connector in midfield versus just being a sit back, deep, ping passes long from the heart of midfield as a number 6. He's being asked to do a lot of different things and learn a new role. I thought this was interesting from Saturday, Lucas. Nashville in the first half lost possession in their own half 14 times. That was compared to Miami losing it 22 times in their own half. In the second half, when Nashville was much better, had more possession, they lost possession in their own half 4 times in the entire second half. Inter Miami lost it 31 times in their defensive half. The lines got higher, the press got higher, the play was better, and Nashville was safer. It didn't make a lot of mistakes. This is a very long-winded way to answer your question, Lucas, I know, but ultimately, I think it's realistic to understand that there are going to be adjustments that happen over the first 2 months of a season, and that's okay for this team right now.
And maybe those adjustments come in the summer as Nashville SC did announce 2 trades this past week, one with Houston Dynamo and another with Philadelphia Union. Starting with Houston, Nashville sends winger Mackenzie Gaines to Houston Dynamo in exchange for $75,000 in 2025 general allocation money. The Boys in Gold also sent $350,000 in 2025 general allocation money to Philadelphia Union in exchange for a 2024 and a 2025 international roster spot. So 2 international roster spots. And when you look at those moves, Will, what kind of creeps into your head as far as the sort of flexibility this could provide for the club for this year and moving forward into next season?
It's exactly that, flexibility. Without that international spot, you are looking at a summer transfer window coming up in a couple of months where you are looking for a very specific type of player. A player with a U.S. passport is all that you can get at that point. I think what this does for Mike Jacobs, the general manager, for Gary Smith, the head coach, for the entire front office and coaching staff is it widens their search significantly. So if you are looking for 2 or 3 different positions, yet Gary Smith and Mike Jacobs collaborate on this and say, we've got a profile of what a left winger looks like in our team. We've got a profile of what a left back, what a central defensive midfielder, what an attacking midfielder looks like in this team. It is easier to find that kind of player when that player can be from anywhere around the world. So now, international spot for 2024 and for 2025. Nashville has been smart in their approach of finding undervalued around the league American players or players with U.S. passports. I think the perfect example of that is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd comes into this team from LA Galaxy because LA Galaxy spends $8 million to bring in Joseph Paintsel, a Ghanaian player who plays for his country in the African Cup of Nations a few months ago. Is an amazing talent. Tyler Boyd's out of a spot. Tyler Boyd's a great player. Tyler Boyd is a player that could start for, I would say, 2/3 to 3/4 of Major League Soccer, but LA Galaxy just spent $8 million on one player. Okay, well then Nashville decides, let's, in the offseason, trade our international spots, find the best American player available to us that is being replaced by X, Y, or Z player. Jacob Schaffelberg, another example of the way this works, although he is Canadian. And Italians go to Toronto FC, and Jacob Schaffelberg comes into this team and is really making big improvements. That is where Nashville will have added flexibility this summer. They have got a ton of options at their disposal.
You can watch us on YouTube, 104.5 The Zone TV, and chat with us. Taylor H. in the chat asks, did Gary Smith talk about the goalie switch at halftime? Hadn't mentioned that yet. So Elliot Panico gets the start for the second consecutive game in Miami, and he subbed out at halftime in favor of Joe Willis. Not an injury sub, and not even necessarily, Will, a shot-stopping issue, but some miscues passing out of the back for Panico. He concedes a corner kick on an errant pass intended for Lucas McNaughton. He has one giveaway that nearly results in a Miami goal, if not for a goal line clearance by Lucas McNaughton. But Gary Smith actually pretty positive about Elliot Panico post-game. Just felt there needed to be a change, whether it was just Elliot's mindset going into that game, just felt there needed to be a change going into the second half. But I wouldn't rule out Elliot Panico coming back into the fold for this team in MLS play, whether it be this weekend or kind of moving forward. But it's going to be something interesting to watch what plays out at the goalkeeper position for Nashville.
I totally agree, and I think both players have good qualities. Elliot Panico will always be appreciated, not only for what he did in Leagues Cup last season and helping Nashville get to the Leagues Cup final, making a trio of saves within that run and penalty shootouts, but I think just for being as good of a teammate as he is. You talk to guys in that locker room, Elliot Panico is as good of a teammate as you can find in a position where it's hard to be a good teammate. Goalkeepers don't rotate in and out very much. The manager can give a left back, a striker, a right wing, a game to keep them fresh, to rotate bodies in and out. Goalkeepers, if you are good, if you are a number one, if you don't have strong competition behind you, you could start every single game of the season. And that's expected of you. Nashville has the luxury of having a 1A and a 1B. And Elliot Panico has not gotten down on himself when Joe Willis has had long runs in the team. He's stayed focused. He's stayed engaged. He has risen to the occasion when his number has been called. Every time it has been called in a Nashville shirt, there is still a moment this season where Nashville is going to rely on Elliot Panico to get them a result, to do a job for them, and not just in a penalty shootout. Both players have good quality, and I think both will be relied on the rest of the way.
Well, one player Nashville has relied on heavily since its MLS existence began is defender Dan Lovitz, and he joins us next. Dan Lovitz talks about the loss to Miami, officially surpassing 10,000 regular season minutes in his Nashville career, and much more. Coming up next, Dan Lovitz joins us here on NSC Backstage, 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. It's NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone alongside Will Boling. I'm Lucas Panzica, joined today by a man who surpassed 10,000 career minutes with Nashville Soccer Club on Saturday in Miami. It is Nashville SC fullback and defender Dan Lovitz. Dan, appreciate the time today, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and thank you for the minute stat. That's great. I'll let my mom know.
I mean,
That's
is
excellent.
that something you know going into a game? I know 78 minutes was the mark that
Okay.
had you past 10K. I don't know if you knew that going in. Does somebody let you know after you walk off the field? How does that work?
No, we don't really have an obscure stats. Not that that's obscure. I think it's very relevant. I appreciate you looking at that. No, we don't have a stats person that comes and like lets you know. I think if it's an appearance or um something goal related, something more exciting, I think they'll kind of give you a heads up either before or after. And if they want to do a sort of presentation or sort of moment of recognition, I've seen that done before. But usually with guys in the past like Dax who have played, 1,000 MLS games or whatever it was. So no, that's news to me. That's really cool. So pretty awesome.
Will and I are in the business of obscure stats. So
Yeah, baby. Someone's got to do it.
It's on our business cards.
Yeah, we take it as a compliment, I swear.
Excellent. Okay.
When you do walk off the field of a 3-1 loss at Miami and how that game went, how do you kind of balance between building on the positives from that performance, because there were some just in what you guys were doing in your build-up play, especially in the second half in possession, versus obviously the disappointment of the loss and how some of those goals were conceded?
Right. I think it's a really difficult thing to navigate, and I think every team, tries to navigate it in different ways. But for us, given the way the season has started and the stretch of games that we have in front of us, especially, it's hard to separate the emotional, dejection from the loss and not being able to pick up points on the road, even though it's against a good team and a tough place to play. And in between that and being positive about things that we just objectively need to improve on, that we kind of did see take some steps forward on the field against Miami. We started the game very well, and that's something that we really try to focus on doing, especially in a few weeks or a month here coming up where we have a lot of home games. That's something that we want to be reflected in our play and our approach. So it was great to kind of have that good start to the game, even though it wasn't one of our guys that scored in the first goal. We'll take what we can get at the moment, and it was encouraging. So to your point, I think it's a good sort of step in the right direction, which is a crazy thing to say after a loss. But I think the feeling around the locker room and the group is a little bit more positive, and knowing that we're starting to, look and feel a little bit more like ourselves, which is huge.
Nashville defender Dan Lovitz, our guest tonight here on NSC Backstage. And Dan, every team you guys have played this season is currently above the playoff line. That changes this weekend against San Jose. Different challenges with that team that we can get into. But when you look at the teams you've had to play this season and just the overall quality in this league, forget Messi and all those guys, a lot of other talented players you guys have already had to defend against. What are some of the qualities you feel like have made this league so much more difficult? Where are you seeing the biggest improvements from maybe the beginning of your career to some of the teams you're facing now here in 2024?
Yeah, for sure. I think, you hear a lot of guys talking about MLS 1.0, 2.0. I don't know what version we're at right now, but I think it all sort of corresponds with the functionalities of the league and how the cap is manipulated, and sort of salary cap, that is. Trying to figure out how teams are going to approach that, and everybody's given a clean slate to start, but it becomes pretty clear who values what assets in terms of roster build. And thankfully, that has nothing to do with me as a player, and I can just focus on what I need to do. But you see the expansion franchises that have thrown tons of money at it and had success, or not. Look at how Miami started their time in the league. It wasn't something that they were super proud of, and it took them some time to evolve. We didn't experience such a low, so to speak, coming into the league, but we're trying to evolve in our own way for sure. But more than anything, I think relative to our schedule and the way results have gone and who we've been able to play against so far this year, I think any of the teams above the playoff line, wherever that is right now, would gladly trade, our spot now with them if it happened in November. And they would much rather be in that spot in November than where, we're going into the later part of April. I don't think, it certainly means something. It's an indicator of how well the team is playing at the moment, but we care about what our body of work as a season will look like. And we know that peaking at the right time is all really we care about. And it's certainly really important in this league where there's so much parity, like you said. The competition element has just gotten better and better throughout my time in the year. There's no real -1 or 2 a year. There's no real clinkers. There's not a lot of teams that just consistently struggle. They all seem to have some weird, whether it's streaky, string of games that they get results in that everyone didn't see coming, or teams that, are really great and then fall off in strange moments. I think I've seen everything in my career, and I know which version of it we want to try to be on the side of going into the meat and potatoes of this schedule we have coming up. So all the play for, certainly. And like you said earlier, I think it's important that we start to look and feel a little bit more like ourselves and try to gain momentum at the right time.
And what specifically does that look like? What were some of those positives you felt like you're able to take away from the Miami game? In what ways is this team starting to look and feel like itself a bit more?
Yeah, speaking of obscure stats, I was on Twitter, or X, sorry, X now, and I saw something about expected goals, and I'm not a huge expected goals or stats person when it comes to that, because I don't know what they're doing to really determine a lot of that, but so be it. That's sort of the common currency in evaluating offensive production. So be it. But I saw that it was one of our highest ones on the road in our time together as a club in the MLS era. So that's a positive, and that is statistics and data driven. So you can't really argue with that. And quite frankly, from the field perspective, being down there, it really did feel like we were able to dictate a lot more, especially on the road, which I always think is a positive indicator. But more than anything, like I said, the way we started the game was really encouraging. I think we stifled a lot of what makes Miami really good. And they have a lot of talent. And, they were sort of taking our role from us and being a little bit more of a counterattack team versus, a dominant team in possession that was methodically working chances. It's sort of, we reverse roles in that way, I think, in the first half and for large portions of the second half. But as always, I think we need to focus on getting better in both boxes. And I think defensively and offensively, there's definitely strides to be made in keeping the ball out of our net and scoring a little bit more often. And that's where we start to tighten the screw and just getting reps. And, like I said, having this slate of home games, I don't think there's a better opportunity to really, try to hit that next gear and try to iron some of those things out and really play with some passion and some positivity moving forward, knowing that, it's starting to become business time.
You guys went into Miami with that 3-5-2 look that we've seen in recent weeks. Curious for you, Dan, what kind of adjustment you have to make when you're building out in possession from being that left-sided center back versus just an out-and-out fullback in a 4-4-2, which obviously you've done countless times for this club as well. Is there any sort of mental adjustment that you have to make or grow into when you've got back-to-back-to-back weeks of playing this setup?
No, I mean, of course, there's an adjustment. I've worn a lot of different hats in my career. I've obviously logged the most amount of minutes playing in a natural four-back system and as a left back. But I think more than anything, we're trying to get the best out of this team and this combination of players and trying to find a good way to be competitive, given that there are some glaring omissions in the form of injuries, and every team has to navigate that in different ways. But I look at it as a challenge. I really enjoy having a different perspective on the field, especially offensively. I think there's some interesting things that can develop out of that setup and out of that position for me personally that I'm looking forward to trying to perfect, really. But the most important thing, like you said, is having a string of games and some continuity with some, things that we can start to draw from previous performances, and we're not going to a new system the following game. I think that's something that, as players, it becomes a lot easier to perfect whatever your role is, and collectively things start to look a little bit more cohesive and in tune with one another. And I think that's a huge thing that we're looking for right now, because given the condensed schedule at the start of this year, and like I said, some injuries, I think it's kind of been a mix and match along with some difficult fixtures. I think it's been hard to really get some continuity. And thankfully I'm not the coach and I don't have to navigate any of that stuff. But as players, I think it's certainly something that we all really, really value, is having continuity and having guys in similar looking shapes with opportunities to play in roles that are clearly defined. And I think anytime we do that, and we have stretches of games where we don't have to switch a ton, I think the product on the field just looks a lot better.
Nashville SC defender Dan Lovitz is our guest here on Backstage, 104.5 The Zone. Speaking of continuity, you've had that with Jacob Schaffelberg and that connection you two have had to establish on the left side of that formation with him as now a left wing back. And we've talked a lot about Jacob, obviously, this year, Dan. He has credited you, though, a lot with helping him become a better defender and recognize the right moments to become a defender in that wing back role. Obviously, Jacob, such a forward-thinking player. So curious what you've seen from him this season with what he's been doing in the final third and now adjusting into this new role.
Yeah, I mean, I give a ton of credit to Jacob. He's really leaned into being a more well-rounded player. Not that he isn't already, but certainly there have been moments where he feels like he lets the team down, or in certain circumstances, he doesn't feel like he's tuned in defensively like he really should. And quite honestly, I tell him not to worry about it, and that I'll yell for him when I need his help. And otherwise, I need him to stay as far away from me as possible, because we want him really dictating to the other team as much as possible. I'm a firm believer in, offense being the best defense. So we try to get them being the other team to respect Jacob's pace and to make sure they're aware, if they don't get things absolutely perfect, that we're just going to smack it over the top to him and make sure he can open his legs up and really pose them a threat. And as that starts to happen a little bit more consistently, I think it starts to open up space for guys like Hani and Randall and Tyler Boyd and Sam Surge, obviously. So the verticality, if you will, that Jacob provides us is really, really important. And he's really tuned in, like I said, to being a better defender and to be able to play both sides of the ball. But I'm trying to make sure there's as little in his brain as possible other than what happens when we win the ball in dangerous spots. I think he needs to get up the field, and I don't need him next to me babysitting me all the time. But there are certain moments. I think there were a few plays in the Miami game that I couldn't believe he was, in such a good spot defensively and was able to cut out some really dangerous opportunities for them. So credit to him. He's really doing it on both sides right now. He's been great offensively, and I think he just needs to keep building on his confidence, and he's going to really, really help our team a lot.
Nashville SC defender Dan Lovitz is our guest here on 104.5 The Zone. Dan, when you look at this stretch of games coming up, 4 out of the next 5 at home, I know Gary Smith talks a lot about you guys in that evolution of Nashville SC being good with the ball against an opponent that is comfortable defensively, just sitting back and letting you guys have a lot of the possession. How much of a point of emphasis is that for you guys at home, taking it to the opposition and making the most of these next 5 games?
I think it's more, like you said, I think it's more about taking it to the other team and worrying about how we're going to be dangerous. And of course, ball retention and possession sometimes gets a little bit misconstrued as dominance, whereas you can have a team that dominates the ball, but they get counterattacked and they lose the game 3-0. I think we fall somewhere in between. I think realistically, we're not, I wouldn't say, a real possession-based team. I think we're able to take advantage of how teams defend us. And if they want to come and get tight to us, we have guys that can beat them over the top with pace. And if they really want to sit back, we have creative players that are able to put them under a lot of stress. So we have to be a little bit more, I think, creative and adaptable to what teams are trying to do against us. And it represents a different challenge every game. But like you said, I think the most important thing is that we're able to put teams under pressure for consistent periods of the game. And I think that becomes a lot easier when you play in a place like Geodis with the fans that we have, and anything becomes a lot easier at home. And so I think that being able to play an energetic brand of positive forward thinking soccer becomes a lot more easy when you have a few games at home back to back. I think there's 1 away game sprinkled in, but I think it's the next 4 or 5 or something that are at home. So that's what you live for. This is the stretch that we really need to capitalize on. I think everyone's really excited to do so, but we're aware of the situation that we're in now and the lack of points, to put it frankly, and that's something that we have to rectify in this stretch that you mentioned.
All right, Dan, last thing I've got for you is from my useless stat department. 10,000 minutes brings you to 166 hours. The Rocky movie box set is 10 hours. That is the Rocky movie box set. I know you're a man of a native of Philadelphia. That's 16 trips through the Rocky box set. I am something of a Rocky movie connoisseur myself. So there you go. Perspective on your MLS regular season career.
Well, that's really special, and not to blow smoke, just telling you the truth. I am upstairs right now, but downstairs there's a television in my home playing Rocky 4 as we speak.
That's awesome.
So I just want you to know I appreciate that, and that's a weird moment we just had. But thank you for sharing so we can make that awesome connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Literally, I at one point, and I think middle school, had the flu, was out of school for a week, and I watched every single one of them in 1 week, and it instantly, favorite movies done.
Time well spent. Time well spent.
Absolutely.
Is that Rocky 4 just playing on repeat, or just Rocky movies on a loop, or is that just a pure coincidence, or is that just me stereotyping someone from Philly?
It's a little bit of both. I have one TV. I have a great cable package. I do what I have to do, and then I have all the Rockies just on loop on like a small little VHS set. That's what I do.
Oh man, that's great. Well, then you mentioned it. For the next 5 games are at home at Geodis Park. How much importance are you guys in the dressing room placing on this next stretch here, starting with San Jose this weekend? Earthquakes coming to town.
It's huge. Look, it's a must-win game for us. I think, the good thing about, or not the good thing, but one of the positives I'll take from this moment that we find ourselves in this season is that we're not trying to create something that was never there. In terms of winning games at home, we've had great success at home throughout the years, especially in Geodis. We know what that feels like. We know what it looks like. We know what it needs to sort of embody for the fans as a watchable product, and we know what it feels like on the field. And I think those things are one and the same, and it's not rocket science. We just have to get out there and do it and play like we have in the past there. And I think this is a great opportunity to do it, and I don't think we'll look back after that.
10,000 minutes in gold in the books and many more to come. Dan Lovitz has been our guest. We'll let you get back to Rocky IV, Dan. Best of luck this Saturday against San Jose, and we always appreciate the time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. It was a blast.
In gold. So 18,000 is the number of minutes in Dan's MLS career, Montreal and Toronto. A lot of time in Canada for Philadelphia native Dan Lovitz, but now Will officially over half of his MLS regular season career has been in Nashville. Obviously a pillar for this team, who in his minutes and games played have gone up with every season he has played for Nashville since coming with the team in 2020 in its first MLS season.
It is pretty incredible, too, because I remember doing an interview with him in 2020 during COVID, and that was not that far removed from Dan Lovitz being a left midfield player. At the beginning of his MLS career, he was a winger in Toronto, in Montreal, and now in 2024, he's a center back for this team right now. I think the versatility he has been able to show has been tremendous. I think specifically in a league like Major League Soccer, where you do have roster restrictions, you can't take billions of dollars from one owner and just go buy whoever you want around the world. Leagues are now changing around the world where you can't really do that anywhere these days anyway. But in a league where you do have roster restrictions, versatility is just so important. And having a guy in Dan Lovitz who probably could go back to left mid in a pinch if you really needed to, left wing back, left back, doing a good shift at left center back for the team right now, just so valuable to Gary Smith and to this Nashville team.
Over 10,000 career minutes. He'll look to tack on many more. Starting on Saturday, Nashville hosts San Jose Earthquakes at the bottom of the MLS standings. There is news, though, breaking during the show that San Jose has made a club record signing. We'll tell you who that is and preview the matchup coming up next. This is NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone. Nashville Soccer Club trying to snap back into form after back-to-back losses to Philadelphia Union and at Inter Miami, who currently leads the Supporter Shield standings in Major League Soccer. And the boys in gold reset to host the team at the bottom of the Supporter Shield standings in MLS. Welcome back. It's NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone alongside Will Boling. I'm Lucas Panzica, and we have news, Will, as San Jose, who desperately is trying to revitalize their season, only one win in 9 league games so far. According to a report by The Athletic, the Earthquakes have signed attacking midfielder Hernan Lopez from Godoy Cruz out of Argentina in a club record deal worth around $6 million. The attacking midfielder, 23 years old, he will join as a designated player. 5 goals, 6 assists in 28 appearances across all competitions last year. And perhaps the most interesting piece of this is the lineage. Will, he is the grandnephew of one Diego Maradona. Of course.
I just seen that too. That is unbelievably random. Is what that is.
Did you expect that today?
No.
When we're talking about the team that's conceded by far the most goals in MLS this season, in San Jose coming to town, them signing Diego Maradona's grandnephew mid-show.
I did wake up this morning learning or wondering what Diego Maradona's grandnephew is up to. So I guess we have the answer to that. 23 years old, designated player, broke through the very talented River Plate Academy in Argentina. 5 goals, 6 assists, and 28 appearances across all competitions last year. We'll see. $6 million, the report. I think this just being a report, which it is at the moment, of Tom Bogert of The Athletic, very reputable source, someone we've had on this station before on soccer shows ourselves. This will not be something I think that affects Nashville this weekend. Not official from the club yet, just a report. And at this point, I think good sign perhaps for Nashville that they will not have to deal with San Jose's new club record signing when they come to town this weekend.
Yeah, especially for an international player, probably too quick of a turnaround. But look, it's not necessarily a San Jose team that desperately needs goals. They've scored 13 times through 9 games this season. They've conceded 24, which is the most conceded by an MLS team this season by a margin of 6, the third most goals conceded by a team at this stage of the season in MLS history, only behind Minnesota in 2017 and San Jose in 2020. This team has dangerous pieces going forward, Will. Jeremy Ebobisse leads the team with 3 goals. Christian Espinoza, an MLS All-Star last year, with 6 goal contributions so far this season. So they'll add a catalyst in Lopez. We don't expect him, like we said, to be available on Saturday, but kind of like Nashville, just in a much worse way to this point. The issue for San Jose has been the tally at the end of the games defensively.
Certainly, and they are the 3rd team in MLS history to lose at least 7 of its first 8 matches of a season. DC United did it in 2010. Toronto FC did that in 2012. It has been 12 years since a team has lost 7 of their first 8 games. And Earthquakes have lost 8 of their first 9 games. 3rd team in MLS history to do that as well. Only Toronto in 2012 lost 9 of its first 10 matches to begin a campaign. There are talented pieces on this team, and I think, Lucas, the cautionary tale for Nashville will be, you make a mistake in your defensive 18-yard box against Christian Espinoza, and he'll punish you as well. Jeremy Ebobisse, Jackson Ewell, who has represented the United States men's national team as an anchor for the San Jose midfield. There is a lot going on with them on the ball, in possession. We were speaking before the show about the first goal they conceded against LA Galaxy. It just seems like there's a lot of different ideas on the pitch at once when you watch the San Jose team right now, that the goalkeeper wants to play out from the back. You've got midfielders dropping back into a back line to try to build out. Goalkeeper sends it long. The ball's immediately turned over, and about 10 seconds later, LA Galaxy is celebrating its first goal. Obviously, there is no shame in losing to LA Galaxy, despite the fact that LA did finish that match with 10 men very late. For me, the individuals in this team are still dangerous. Christian Espinoza is still dangerous. The youngster, Nico Chakeris, 18-year-old, who combines with Christian Espinoza on that right-hand side. Espinoza's got a ton of MLS experience. Chakeris obviously doesn't. You make mistakes. The way this team has at times made uncharacteristic mistakes in these first couple of games, this San Jose team will still be able to punish you.
As we watch on the TV here in the studio, Columbus leading Monterrey 2-1, CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinal, first leg action in the 79th minute in Columbus. Thrilling game, end-to-end action between the defending MLS Cup champs and the Mexican Giants Monterrey. Is that the type of game we should anticipate between Nashville and San Jose, who are two teams that just need to snap back into form, right? I mean, Nashville, maybe not quite as bad, not as dire straits as San Jose, who seemingly has been in this spot now for the last few years. Lucha Gonzalez getting them to the playoffs, just scraping into the postseason last year, but in his second season for San Jose. But both teams that just need to get right here, Will. Both teams that are conceding goals at an alarming rate for their respective standards. And I think back to the last time we saw Nashville, not the last time, but the time before last we saw Nashville face San Jose in 2022, a 2-2 draw that was very end-to-end. Is that the type of game we should anticipate here?
I think Nashville will go into this game saying, I want to be the aggressor. All 11 individuals on that pitch take the game to San Jose. And I feel like I'm talking about General Nealon's maxims and going into a Tennessee football discussion. Keep it there for 90 minutes, right? That is what you do at home in Major League Soccer. Talking to Gary Smith, that is one of his goals for this team really over the last 2 seasons. How can we be good with the ball at our feet at home? I think San Jose, honestly, the way they go into this match is let Nashville have possession and try to beat Nashville at their own game. I don't think San Jose goes into this very aggressively. I think they could go into this trying to be a bit more pragmatic. It's what I would do if I were them, be a bit more pragmatic, play in the counterattack, play in transition. But I think for Nashville, you're at home. 4 of the next 5 of these games are at home. This is the time to take that next step in the evolution. The points on the board that you have now, that's what you got moving forward into the month of May. You can't change any of the mistakes, any of the good, any of the bad, any of the injuries. It doesn't matter. 4 of the next 5 games are at home. Nashville, their schedule is about to get a lot more favorable. Lucas, this is the first team that Nashville will play this season below the playoff line through this point of the year. When they went to Miami last week, every team they'd played so far this year would have made the playoffs as the season had ended now. Obviously, it's very, very early in the season. This is a much-needed, different kind of challenge for Nashville, and one that I think they'll be able to take advantage of.
Feels like an opportunity for a turning point here, right? This stretch of the season, like you said, 4 of the next 5 at home. You get San Jose, who's bottom of MLS. You get Montreal, who started off nice, a brilliant first 3 games, and they've dropped points in the last few weeks. They're below the playoff line. A Charlotte team that you've already beaten once. You got to travel to Bank of America Stadium May 11th. But a team that is sitting firmly in 9th in the Eastern Conference before coming back to host a talented Toronto team midweek and then to host Atlanta United that same weekend, May 18th. Big games. Those are the next 5 games, 4 of them at home, a couple of them against teams below the playoff line. And obviously Nashville needs to get healthy. We know that. Gary Smith, again, will meet with the media tomorrow. I'm certain he'll be asked about Walker Zimmerman, about Shaq Moore. Probably the 2 to kind of keep an eye on to potentially come back this weekend, and we'll get an update on Lucas McNaughton after he left the game injured Saturday. And then potentially Randall Leal, who makes his season debut in Miami, gets about 6 minutes. Gary Smith admitting after the game, Leal behind the pace a little bit as expected. He has not got a minute of action since getting injured with the Costa Rican national team in the preseason. It will be very interesting to see how much of a role or a factor Randall Leal plays on Saturday at Geodis Park.
Yeah, certainly. And a guy right now looking for game time, you get about the 15-minute increment. First, is there a half hour for Randall Leal? What's the next step? Is it 20 minutes again? And just getting through that again. And that's a player that can play in all phases of the game when you're defending a goal, when you need a goal. I would certainly love to see him take that next step this weekend against San Jose.
Big weekend in Music City. Of course, you have the NFL Draft. You have Nashville part owner Philip Forsberg and the Nashville Predators coming back home with their first-round series against the Vancouver Canucks, and the Boys in Gold hosting San Jose Earthquakes Saturday night at Geodis Park. Hope you'll join us right here on 104.5 The Zone. You can also watch on Apple TV with the option to listen to the home radio broadcast audio. Kickoff at 7:30, pregame starting at 7, and we will talk to you then. For Will Boling and our producer Jackson Williams, I'm Lucas Panzica saying goodnight. This is NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone.